sense or the frustrations, and we're trying to solve some problems with bees and how they draw comb. So what I've got in front of you is some drawn comb. These are some frames of drawn comb here, drawn comb here. And if you do not know what drawn comb is, a drawn comb is comb that is built by the bees and like formed into these little hexagons. So all of this is drawn comb. So you look really nice, really close. You can see all these little hexagons. We put these in our stores so that people can see. And you can see where kids have smashed the drawn comb right here. They've taken their fingers and they've pushed it into it and smashed it. You can see right beside it, this is drawn comb. This is smashed drawn comb. The bees, when they get the foundation or when they get the frames, it doesn't look like this. It looks like this. So this is the same as this, but the bees have drawn this out. You can say this is drawn comb. This is pulled comb. I'm trying to think of the other terms that beekeepers use. There's so many different ways of saying everything in beekeeping. But typically the term that you're going to hear the most is drawn comb when it's described this. So if someone says, hey, you need to put a frame of drawn comb in there, this is what they're talking about. But when you give your bees the foundation, you give them the frame, it's going to look like this. It's a brand new wooden frame on the sides. And then our foundation is black double wax foundation that's made in the US here by Acorn. This is a really fantastic product. We absolutely love it. So this is a black plastic and it's coated with 2 layers of beeswax. And what that does is it gives bees a starting point to build their comb for them. But before we kind of get into anything else, let's talk about this frame right here. So if you have had this happen in your hive, you are not alone. This happens a lot to beekeepers. I'd say every beginner beekeeper has this problem at some point. And it's really, if you put this on Facebook and you say, hey, what's going on? You'll get a lot of answers. Probably the most common answer you'll get is somebody who's like, oh, bees hate plastic foundation. Don't use plastic foundation. It's kind of annoying because this doesn't necessarily have to do with the black plastic foundation. And also the color of the plastic does not matter at all to the bees. It's only for the beekeeper. But what's happening right here to this frame is because the bees are, it is true, they don't like plastic foundation as much as they like pure wax foundation. But pure wax foundation is a pain in the butt and it's very difficult to install. And that's why beekeepers don't like it. So if you can see right here, this has no wax on it. So typically when you buy really cheap foundation, a lot of times you'll buy it on Amazon and it's coming from China and it has no beeswax or very little beeswax, or it has a blend of beeswax and paraffin, or worse, has all paraffin. So bees do not like paraffin. So what you're getting is cheap plastic foundation with cheap beeswax or cheap paraffin sprayed on top of it in a very small amount. And the bees do not like that. That is true. Bees do not like that. So what we do is we get really high quality black plastic foundation with 2 layers of beeswax on it. So what happens is the bees really like this and they will start drawing it out. But bees are not magicians. They need the right resources to draw out the foundation so that it looks like this. They need food in the form of sugar water, or they need nectar, and they need bees of the right age to do it. And also the right time of the year too. You can't give this to bees in the middle of winter and expect them to do this. This is the drawing comb and forming comb is a thing done by bees of a certain age that have plenty of food and food coming in, and it's also warm enough. So this happens in the spring or summer. But like I said, they're not magicians. They need all those things to be able to make really nice drawn comb. But I haven't even talked about the main reason that this happens and why it happens to beginner beekeepers a lot of time. So this frame did not have very much beeswax on it, and the bees built off of it. But actually, the main reason this happens is, let me show you right here. So this is a brand new 10 frame deep box. So when beekeepers get their bees for the first time, they dump their package in, or that they will put their nuke in, and they will just kind of like walk away. So what happens is they will leave a gap. They'll do something like this. And what will happen is if they do this, the bees will opt to make their own comb where they want it rather than onto the face of the foundation like this. So when these little sidebars, if you don't know, these are made to be pushed together. They're made to automatically space these frames out to be the right space that bees like. So if you do this, or if you do something like this, any version of leaving a gap, the bees are apt to do this because they have a little bit of extra room off of the face of the comb because the beekeeper left a gap, and they start building off the face of the foundation because they would just rather build free-form foundation or free-form wax than they would to pull out these cells so that it looks like this. And that is true of pure beeswax foundation, and it's also pure a plastic foundation, no matter how much beeswax it has on it. So bees would rather build wild comb where they want it rather than onto the foundation you've given them. If you're a new beekeeper or any beekeeper, you, with few exceptions, you will want to push all of your frames to the middle. So you don't want this, you don't want to space them out. With few exceptions, you want to make sure all of these little sidebars are touching each other. So the way that works is after you've done your inspection, usually there's a little bit of a gap between all the different frames. And before you put another box on, or before you put that cover back on the hive, you've got to fix what you've done. So the easiest way to do that is to take your hive tool and put it, you're going to take your hive tool like this, and you're going to put it right here, and you're going to push it all the way there, and see how there's a nice big gap right here? And you're going to push it on the other side, and then you're going to come over to this side, and you're going to push it so that the gap here is equal to the gap here. So now all the frames are perfectly centered into the hive. And what happens is there's no extra additional gap between the foundation and the foundation beside it, which is what bees actually want. They want that particular space, and it's designed, when these frames are made, they're designed to be touching, and that if they are touching, then that is the correct amount of space between those foundations. So I would say the main cause of this is having a gap between your frames like this. It's a very, very simple thing. If all beekeepers would push their frames together like this, then they would be more successful, and they would have nicer comb and even comb. And the real advantage of that is when you pull these frames out, you're not going to be rubbing the bees next, like the bees on this foundation are not going to be rubbing against the bees on this comb right here. And then when you kind of put it back together, it's okay to have like a little bit of extra space to kind of drop that in. That's actually ideal, because you don't want to, roll the queen or rub the other bees against each other. But just make sure that you just take your hive tool and you just close these gaps up between the frames, and you have a little bit of gap here. But what's going to happen over time is the bees will do what you see here, and they're going to have little bits of comb and wax that gets built up on these sidebars. And eventually you won't really have a gap on these sides, because everything will be kind of like drawn out nicely on the foundation, but there'll just be a little bit of a gap, like a 1/16 of an inch of wax or propolis between all these frames. They'll still be touching, but there'll be some wax in there, and you won't have as much of this space right here. So just to kind of like recap and kind of show you what we were talking about, this is nicely drawn comb. That's what you want. But if you have something like this, you're going to either need to take this frame out like this, or take this foundation out like this. And if it's plastic, you can just take it out like this. You can just take it completely out of the frame. You can either throw this away and get a sheet of nice high quality foundation with extra wax on it, or you can scrape all of these off and just take some extra beeswax, either melted or a block, and you're going to try and like coat this with beeswax. Because if you got really terrible foundation with very little beeswax on it, which is extremely common. I would say the vast majority of the foundation in the US is sold, and it's either a blend of beeswax and paraffin if it's coming from another country. But if it's made in the US, the vast majority of foundation sold has very little beeswax actually on it. It doesn't have paraffin, but it just has very little beeswax. So it pays to take and melt more beeswax and brush it on here. Or you can take a block of, like a cube of beeswax, scrape it on there like it's cheese. So this one is not trash, but the bees are never going to draw a really, really nice comb on this until you fix it as the beekeeper. So anyways, I hope you found that helpful. It's something we face a lot in the store when we talk to beekeepers about, the issues that they're facing. So thanks for watching. If you got any questions, just leave a comment for us. Share this with a new beekeeper friend so you can kind of save some hassle dealing with this. So check out our website, check out our other videos. We really appreciate you watching.